Welcome to Connections California. It's Parents Helping Parents latest program that we have, and it is a statewide hub of resources and information in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese to assist families with young adults with any disability who are going to transition into adulthood and begin to use adult services. Connections California contains live events like this one tonight, an e-learning library, and several curated resources on all topics around transition to adulthood and adult services. We thank Santa Clara Family Health Plan for their support, or else none of this would be happening. I'd like to again welcome you to Pathways to College for students with learning differences. And our presenters this evening are Sheila Reilly, who's the head of school for Star Academy in San Rafael. Sheila's background includes over 20 years of business, education, and healthcare management. Star Academy is a private, non-public, and non-profit school that serves students with a variety of complex learning differences, third grade through high school, with a post-high school program as well. Vanessa Brown, the Assistant Director of School and Transition Coordinator at Bayhill High School in Berkeley, believes that when students find their individual voices, they are then equipped to make a difference in self, in others, and in society. Bayhill High School educates students with learning differences, focusing on their individual learning needs, maximizing their inherent abilities and their potential to succeed. Stormy Miller Sabia is Director of Student Services, Student Accessibility, and Psychological Services at College of Marin in Kentfield. Stormy cares deeply about individuals with disabilities and providing for educational and employment supports to aid in degree attainment and livable wages. College of Marin's commitment to educational excellence is rooted in equity practices and student-centered programs, fostering success for all members of their diverse community. And Bregan Arnett, Assistant Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Dominican University in San Rafael, has a passion for helping students enroll in college, providing information and support they need to make informed decisions. Dominican educates and prepares students to be ethical leaders and socially responsible global citizens who incorporate the Dominican values of study, reflection, community, and service into their lives. So without further ado, I'm turning this over to Sheila. Thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you, Alyssa, and hello, everyone. Thanks so much for spending time with us this evening. I appreciate that great introduction you did. You made my job really easy, Alyssa. The only thing I wanted to add, which is a new passion of mine, is I'm also teaching math to our students, and that's been a wonderful way to stay connected to what's happening in the classroom on a daily basis. Let's go ahead. So the part of this presentation that I'm going to talk about today is about on the pathway to college is the post-secondary planning, the post-high school transition planning. And we spend a lot of time talking about this and thinking about it because it's such a critical element of a student having a successful post-secondary experience. And we know, and copious amounts of research has shown that both job opportunities and wages for students with learning differences are directly and positively correlated with students having at least some post-secondary education. So it's really important for outcomes. And then also, and I can speak from experience here, and now in my 4th year of having our students go to the junior college setting, it's remarkable what it does for a sense of students' confidence and self-esteem, their ability to problem solve, their executive functioning, when they're moving from a high school, a sheltered high school experience into a college environment, junior college environment. The amount of growth is remarkable, and they are entitled to that. They deserve those opportunities. So we really want to keep empowering them with that sense of agency and hold the bar high for what might be possible after high school. Another important part, of course, of good post-secondary planning is to lessen the stress and anxiety for students. That is the transition and thinking about leaving the high school environment can be very stress-inducing for students and for parents. So giving us ample time to plan can facilitate that with less stress all around the table. Of course, self-determination is really one of our main goals, is making sure students know what options they have and they make good decisions in alignment with their hopes and dreams. So if we start early, we can get better information, richer and deeper options so they can make better decisions and really maximize their potential. And then finally, that satisfaction, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but seeing them realizing that they have very valuable contributions to make to their communities and that they're not defined by their learning differences is the most rewarding thing of working with students in a post-secondary environment. Okay, so now I'm going to get practical and share some information, some tips for transition planning. The first one is start early. It is not too early to start in ninth grade. In fact, we start in a very direct way in ninth grade. Those 4 years go quickly, and we want to make sure that we're getting our students ready in a developmentally appropriate way. So the first thing I want to touch base on is engaging the student in a meaningful way in their process for exploration. If they're on an IEP and they're placed in a high school program via the IEP, making sure that they're meaningfully included in the process. So we expect in high school that all of our students attend their IEP meetings. It starts gradual, we build up. Ninth grade, they at least need to be present, meet everyone on their team, present a student statement, and by 12th grade, we definitely expect them to be weighing in on goals and presenting at their IEP. If your school doesn't have supports in the program for your student to do so, then provide them for your student and help them be meaningfully engaged. They can certainly give ideas into goals and review goals going into the meeting ahead of time. So if they have questions or comments, they're front loaded. And as parents, if your student does have an IEP, once they get to high school or they're 16, a new part of the IEP comes online. It's called the Individual Transition Plan. And the transition plan reflects the students' goals, their hopes and dreams and desires in 3 important areas: education, employment, and independent living. And it's important to know that the responsibility and the focus of who's in the driver's seat starts to shift a little bit when students enter high school, and they're more center in the wheel. And we see this graphic here, the whole person, that student is really in the center there. So parents start to practice that pulling back even in the 9th grade. Important piece too with your thinking about transition planning for your student is to make sure you have linkages to the outside agencies. If your student's a regional center client or a Department of Rehabilitation client, in those later IEPs or meetings, transition planning meetings, certainly in the 12th grade meeting, those people should be at the table as well, so they can hear what the school team has to say about how best to support your student, what the student says about what their interests and hopes are when they leave the high school setting. And if the school that your student's in is not able to make those connections, then certainly reach out to advocacy and educational organizations like PHP and student and parent advocacy organizations to get more information. Thinking about this transition program and process, in the 9th grade, that's a time of self-exploration. Students are, let's face it, a bit self-centered at that age, which is totally developmentally appropriate. So let's use that in the 9th and 10th grade to have them do a lot of interest inventorying, thinking about what am I good at? What do I like? What's my personality profile? There's a myriad of tools that can be used to help students define that. And then we also want to really delve into disability awareness with students. It's very important, critically important, that your student understand what their learning differences are and how this impacts them in the educational environment, in jobs, in independent living. We really encourage families to have frank discussions with students using language that's comfortable and pull in other members of your team to help have those conversations. And I'll just say, I know for some folks, the word disability can be a lightning rod. It's a bit of a trigger, but we want to make sure we're not defining people and students by their disabilities, but we want to make sure that we're using language that will mirror what is used in the outside world so that students get access to services that they deserve. In the 11th grade, we start to, and something that you can do as well, is start to help students link their interests to specific jobs. And then in the 12th grade year, it's things like, and also around that 11th grade, early 11th grade year, getting jobs and internships. And in the 12th grade year, they're applying to programs, they're writing resumes, they're interviewing, they're doing internships, they're pulling in those agency partners, they're visiting colleges, those sorts of things. So it's a nice progression. And we talked a little bit about making sure the student then also person-centered planning stays at the center. And I want to say it's an exciting time because really in the 8 years I've been at Star Academy, the post-secondary options for students with learning differences have never been better. And I'm not just talking about students who are capable of receiving a diploma or a degree or even a certificate. There are a lot, college, the college pathway for each student is unique and they're all valid and they all provide such an important way for our students to meaningfully contribute and access learning and social skills and all the wonderful things that they are entitled to. Our kids will need a longer runway, our students with learning differences, so we want to really plan ahead. And it's important that we as family members really envision right along with our students, seeing them in college settings and meaningful employment. A couple of resources that we work closely with and really appreciate are, first of all, are listed here. These are all live links. So when you see the slideshow, you can click right to the resource. California Career Zone is an excellent tool for students to put in their interests, their strengths, their desires, and find careers that align with that. A lot of detailed information about such careers, including educational requirements, how much that career might pay, etc. And students can save those files and results of the research and start to build these portfolios online. There is a free version of California Career Zone, which I've linked here. And also schools have access to a subscription series. So check and see if your student's high school does have that subscription level service and make sure to connect with that. Think College and Think Higher Ed are two of my favorite resources. There is a wealth of information for helping students with learning differences access higher education, everything from research to information about programs across the country to very practical, tangible strategies, financial aid, everything there. Their mission statement is to help students with intellectual disabilities access higher education. But I find even if your student is not a student with an intellectual disability, this information is so valuable. I encourage you to check it out. ONET is another career interest inventory site, which is helpful, and understood.org, of course, to provide support and resources for neurodiverse individuals. I put here, and this is, I'm not going to read this slide text word by word, but I just want to include sample IEP transition goals from the 9th grade all the way to the 12th grade. So you can start to see how a school might help merge this information that students are exploring, for example, the assessment data from their interest inventories into the IEP process. So these types of goals, feel free to copy and paste and suggest them to the folks working to write your students' transition programs. But we really want to make sure that the student data is brought forward into the IEP and have a measurable SMART goal that requires them to take that information and create a summary, define strengths, interests, and preferences. Another goal would be around, this is an example of a disability awareness goal. In this case, have a student do some research, develop a document about autism, what it is, how it impacts them, and at least 3 strategies they can use in these different environments of school, work, and independent living. By 11th grade, we're going to take all that information that we've gathered in the 9th and 10th grade, and we're going to have students look at 2 careers of interest. And not just, I think I might want to do this, but what are the educational and training requirements of those jobs? And that information will become part of a transition portfolio. And by the 12th grade, we're down to 1 specific goal. It could be an education, a program they want to attend. It could be a specific career, but it's going to be very specific. So by the time the student leaves, if they're going to an education setting, the IEP and their accommodations have already been there. We need in the high school setting to help families make those transition, build those bridges so that our students can be most successful. So the IEP process or the transition planning process, if your student's not on an IEP, really goes from the top of the funnel to very specific, and our students really need that specific support. Okay, and one of my last slides, and this is a very practical tool for ways that you can start to help your student build that self-advocacy, self-determination. My favorite strategy here is dignify your child's desires with high expectations. I think that's beautiful and cannot be underemphasized. Have them take public transportation, give them a budget, have them make their own dental appointments, have them manage their own schedules using electronic apps and tools, have them start to really take more and more responsibility for their future. And then finally, as you do engage in this process, keep the bar high, start early to keep the stress low, and enjoy the process. It really is a remarkable time. Thank you so much for giving me this time this evening. Back to you, Alyssa.
Thank you so much, Sheila. That was a wonderful beginning foundation for this presentation, plus lots of practical tips. And I have put in the chat, everyone here will be receiving all the presentations this evening. Those links that were in the presentation will be clickable, and you'll be able to go to those resources, explore them, use them, and even share them with your youth if you'd like to do that, because that's a wonderful thing too. So we have one question in the Q&A, Sheila, and that is, does it make a difference if the student is on a diploma track? Will the transition program still take place?
No difference at all. And I hope you realize that because students on certificate and diploma tracks both benefit and need this specific transition planning. And if a student in California graduates with a certificate of completion, they are completely able to access higher education in the form of junior colleges. And we certainly encourage them to do so. And maybe it's an academic course in their case, and maybe it's an adaptive PE course or an art course. It doesn't matter. Having them access those settings is so important for all the reasons that I mentioned. So no, equally important regardless of the diploma pathway the student's on.
And I might just add that students with LD who are graduating with a diploma, they're going on, they're leaving that environment of high school, whereas students who get a certificate of completion have the option of going to any number of public or private transition programs, where they can still be developing their transition plan before they step out into the world. So, okay, any other questions anyone wants to type in? If not, going once, twice, 3 times. I just want to be able to say thank you so much, Sheila, for your presentation and for your wisdom, and have a good night at your other commitment.
A pleasure, thank you.
And we'll be turning it over now. Whoops, what? I'm sorry, Sheila. I'm sorry, somebody's saying, wait. So,
no problem.
Can we wait? Can we wait a minute? We can talk amongst ourselves. It was in capitals, so I think that it must be important. Silence is deafening. Okay, with no SAT, ACT now available, how do we measure? And then it's just a question mark. So I'm not quite sure what we think we're measuring. Measuring student performance, measuring students' ability in college. Their progress, their performance. Do you want to tackle that one, Sheila?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand the question. Is the question if a student is not required to take an SAT, ACT, and now junior colleges, and Stormy can correct me if I'm wrong, if it's beyond College of Marin, are not requiring placement test, recommendations from the high school are considered in placement of students in the junior college setting. So the transcripts certainly come into play. If it's a student with learning differences, we like to make sure on our team that we're helping the family have the conversations. Our teachers go to the junior college with, if the student is open to that, with the IEP and help discuss with the accessibility counselor what types of supports would be beneficial for the student. But the transcripts, the grades, teacher recommendations all factor into appropriate course selection because, right, we're not working with ACT and SAT.
And Stormy is telling me she'll be able to speak more to this when she speaks.
Perfect.
All right, so we're really going to say goodbye to Sheila now because she really has to go. So thank you so much, Sheila, and welcome to Vanessa. Thank you. Oh, Vanessa, you're muted.
I'm sorry, I forgot.
There we
I
go.
muted everyone because of the dog. Hello, everyone. I'm Vanessa Brown. One of the things that wasn't told when the introduction was done, it was that I am a parent of a young
Right.
woman who is disabled, has a disability. She's deaf with special needs. So I've gone through this process. She is now 34 years old. So I've gone through the whole from elementary, preschool, all the way through higher education with her. So a lot of the stuff that I talk about is things that I know work because I've done it. I've lived it. I know what works. The big thing that I've learned, after talking with families and, having friends with students that have learning differences and other differences, is that no student is the same. So that we have to always look at our student as an individual and look at them. How do we maximize their potential? How do you look at your child and say, okay, this is something that I know my child is strong at? It's because you need to know their strengths and also their weak areas, the areas that they need more support in. For instance, my daughter, math is not her thing. It never is her thing. It will never be her thing. And I recognize that very early at age. So one of the things I put in place very early was that she would use a calculator. And now that she's grown, she used a calculator on her iPhone to calculate any kind of monetary choice that she has to do. Math is just not her thing. It never will be. So, looking at that, there's so much stuff that, so much things to really consider. If someone was to ask me, one of the most important things, if to give advice, would be self-advocacy. And I really, really believe, and also studies have shown it's not the students that have the 4.0 or the 3.8 grade point average that do well in college. It is the students who can advocate for themselves. So it's not enough just for our students to know that they have a learning difference or a disability. They have to know more than that. They have to know what it is. They have to know how it impacts them, and they have to know what they need to be successful. So I'm going to just share this, and then let's go from here. Can everyone see this? Okay, so program goals, as in the introduction was said, that I am the assistant director transition coordinator at Bayhill High School. So some of our program goals are to encourage our students to explore and maximize their individual potential. So we serve like 75 students. And when I say that, every one of those students presents differently, every one of them. So when I'm looking at transitioning students from Bayhill, which is where I work, to adulthood, be it college or employment, I'm looking at the individual needs of the students. What does that student need? And when I say self-advocacy, it's one of the things that I really look at, and really pinpoint and work with the teachers to really get our students to be strong self-advocates, because that is what's really important when it goes, when everything is said and done. The ability to be able to self-advocate, to be able to ask about, what you need and how to get it. Resources. Who is your resource? How do you gain that resource? What do you need? So that's really important, and really to have our students understand the importance of that while they're at Bayhill in a safe environment. And for parents, while they're at home with you, have them practice those skills. We know that in high school, students are beginning to do that, like Sheila said in a previous presentation. However, take the opportunity, the earlier the better. If my daughter went to her IEPs, when she was barely able to sit still, she would be squirming, but I wanted her to kind of get used to it because, it was making decisions about her. So, they incorporate life skills related knowledge into everyday behaviors, talk with your child about, the life skills. What do they need to know, on a daily basis? We do know that our students really thrive on repetition, to reinforcing the basic skills. Educate and empower students to develop their own individual transition plan. Sheila just said that, transition development is really, really important to get all that stuff in there beforehand. We talk about, self-awareness, really having your student, your child know themselves, their strengths, their struggle areas, and qualities about themselves, honesty, responsible, reliable, flexible, all those things, you're building a person, and when they go out and they leave the nest, you want them to be really aware of themselves. Self-awareness is really important, their values, their attitudes, their relationships to others. How do I view myself? How am I viewed by others? What are my strengths? What do I need for adult independence? And really start exploring with them, all the things that they would need before they leave the nest. And then also goal setting, self-motivation. I always tell everyone that if I could teach kids how to self-motivate, I would be rich. But, self-motivation is exactly what that means. It's self-motivation. It has to come from within. So how do we build that? We have to, what about, talking about students, what are my goals? And really talking to them about it, because goals change. They're in junior high school, they think, middle school, it's one thing, and they go to ninth grade, it's a whole nother thing. By the time they get to 12th grade and it's time for them to move on, they've matured. So their goal settings become more realistic. We're talking about prioritizing, time management is so important, executive functioning skills. And these are things that, really make or break a student on the college level. So looking at, what they have, what students have as far as ability, and what do they need, as far as support, which is really important. And what are their goals? Students need to know their goals. And like I said before, time management, how to, teaching students to limit distractions, all of this stuff can be, started at home, so that when they get to college, if they go into a dorm, then they're already used to limiting their own the distractions, because they've been practicing that, and practice. It is so important. Making appropriate decisions, needs versus wants. We want, but it comes down to, do you need to do this at time? What you need to do is you need to do your homework. I know you may want to go out and hang with your friends, but this is your priority, and really having students really practice that. And handling problem situations, understanding the problem, coping strategies, adjusting to changes. And this is really important for students who are away from home for the very first time, because we as parents, we're there, and our student is there with us at home. So we know what's going on with them. We can figure it out by the way they come in, their sour face, the way they open the refrigerator, all these things. We know our kids. But when they're away from home, we don't have our eyes on our students. So it's really, really important that we give our students the ability to be able to actually say, what's going on with them, but also the resources, putting those resources in place. What happens if, your child has a mental health crisis? What happens if they have a health crisis? What happens, if they have a financial crisis? Having all of that kind of resources front loaded for our students is really, really important, so that if there's a crisis, we're not running around trying to figure things out. We've already set that in motion. Self-sufficiency, communication, academics, vocational skills. These are all things that we're looking at for self-sufficiency. employment, whether or not they're going to, there's different paths for college, if they're going to go to college, are they going to work? Are they going to a junior college, or are they going to go to a four-year college? For some of my students, they choose because school has been such a difficult task for them. Sometimes they want a break. They might want to go to a gap year program and travel, and then maybe do education later, or, travel and do like a travel and education program together. So we offered a whole different array of things for our students as far as adulting and how to, get to college. Sometimes everyone thinks it's just a four-year path, but that's not necessarily true. For some students, going straight to a four-year is great, and that's what works for them. For some students, going to a two-year and really getting those skills down and then transfer to a four-year works best. But for some other students, a two-year to a four-year doesn't work because they don't do transitions well. So it's really, really important that the student knows themselves and parents know exactly what their students needs as far as, when it's time for college. So again, self-advocacy, I'd say, that is, to me, the indicator. I actually can tell which one of my students will be the most successful in college when they are leaving Bayhill based on their self-advocacy. I have students that will literally text me or call me and say, hey, Ms. Brown, I need to talk with you. Can we Zoom in or can we talk? I need, I'm planning, take my classes and, I'm struggling, and that is a strong self-advocate. They know who is a resource and they're able to reach out. And those are the things that we want to put in place beforehand. So what are my resources? Who is responsible for managing my resources? How do I access my resources? How do I problem solve issues? Are my resources reliable? And skills essential to self-advocacy: information seeking, communication, decision-making, problem solving, negotiation, and standing up for one's rights. I mean, a student has to know what does the law entitle them to, because in high school to college, it changes. So that's a big learning curve. So the more information that students are front loaded with, then it's easier for them to make the adjustment. There was questions before about, for my students, we look at adulting, as I call it, different ways. So I am going to backtrack a little bit. We look at it as four-year college, two-year college, technical education at the community college, the CTE, gap year program that can include travel, that can include travel education, that can be travel and working. That looks very different for each student. Or some students choose just to go through employment and perhaps delay actually going to college for a bit until they develop some more independent skills. And then for some of our students, they need a little more support. So they go into programs that are independent living skills program that may be in the community with maybe having an education component to it. So there's really different ways of actually looking at college. And I think that's really important. And then also for parents to know that even though the law is clear, any college that receives federal funding has to have access support, disability access support, ability access support. They call it different things at different campuses. However, all that support is not equal. So really looking at what your student needs and where they can best be successful. For instance, I tell people all the time, UC Berkeley is a great school. However, UC Berkeley is not for every student. So we have to look at what your student needs, what kind of environment do they need? Do they need a big school? Do they prefer a small school? What kind of support do they need? Do they need a school where support is completely built in through the whole entire school structure? Or do they need like a program access, like a structured program? So there's different levels of support. So I think that's really important for parents to know. And somewhere in here, I do have a brochure, kind of like a leaflet that was developed by Beacon College that I think is excellent, that will be shared with you. And it's a college match scale. And on there, it tells you the level of support, and based on different things, what your student would need, and based on the level of support that is recommended. And I think this is an awesome, awesome handout. And that will be passed out when the other stuff is shared with you. So I think for me, I think I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Vanessa. And thanks also for sharing that you are a parent who has walked the walk and talked the talk. We all appreciate hearing from those with 34-year-olds. Goodness, mine is 25, and I blink and she'll be 34. So thank you. Thanks for your wisdom.
You're welcome.
And now to hear from Stormy Miller Sabia, who is with College of Marin. Thanks, Stormy.
Thank you, Alyssa. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Yep. Can you all see my screen okay? There you go.
We see, there we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you again. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to focus more on accessing California community colleges. So I'll speak a little bit about what we have to offer here at College of Marin, but I largely want to focus on the system as a whole, because I know that many of you may be in various places in the state. So hopefully you'll find the information relevant, particularly if you're thinking about what community colleges, or what are commonly referred to as two-year colleges, have to offer. So just a little bit about College of Marin. I've had the pleasure of working for the institution for, 6.5 years. We are one of 116 community colleges. That number has increased in the time that I've been a part of the system. And we're located in the North Bay area. We have a campus. We're a single college district, and we have two campuses, one in Novato, our Indian Valley campus, and then we have one here in Kentfield, and my division support both. And I largely work closely with our student accessibility services. As Vanessa mentioned, it's called differently depending on the institution. It might be student accessibility, it might be disability support programs and services, but it is true that all of our 116 community colleges has an office just like mine to support students who may have access needs or reasonable accommodations. I also work closely with our psychological services and support that division in providing mental health services within our system. And I think it's important to share that not every college of the 116 has a mental health services division or psychological services, but many of us do. And so if that is a need or an experience that perhaps your student finds, know that it is free. And there are clinicians who are providing the services, or clinical trainees, and it can be a wonderful resource in terms of navigating the complexities of college life, or personal counseling support that may be needed, particularly if there's challenges with accessing community mental health support. At our college, we have 9,000 students, and students are enrolled in certificate programs. They're working towards an associate in arts, associates in science degrees. Some of the students are they're skill building. They're taking classes that are most relevant to them based on their interests, and they're still trying to discover. We also have students that are they're retired and they're wanting to stay engaged in lifelong learning. So that makes up the 9,000 students. And the story that I'm sharing about College of Marin is really very common across our entire system. You'll see that community colleges are open access institutions. We have students that are in high school that are taking courses to meet high school graduation requirements. And we have those that are just really committed, like I said, to learning. So the beauty of it is, and I'll talk more about the standardized testing and some of those elements that have phased out, but ultimately there aren't strict admission requirements that are tied to attending a community college. So it's a great place to start if you're looking for open access and, most importantly, affordable education. What are we at? $46 a unit. far more affordable, especially if there's financial constraints or concerns, far more affordable to start at a community college than perhaps maybe some of the four-year institutions. So something to consider if you haven't already. Our commitment, as Alyssa mentioned, it's around educational excellence and rooted in providing equitable opportunities and fostering success for all members of our diverse community. And it really is diverse. And we really aim to create a welcoming, inclusive, accessible environment. And I would say I have many colleagues across the state within community colleges, and I feel like many of us strongly hold this commitment. Our missions may be slightly different, but the essence is much the same. I really wanted to lift up this framework for success because this is really driven by our California Community College Chancellor's Office. So they provide oversight of the 116 California community colleges, and there was a call to action a number of years ago. And this framework is really ultimately what we're responsible in adhering to. An equity framework for sure, but guided pathways is critical to our work. And what Guided Pathways really did, and this goes back to, I think, maybe 2018, is it really helped us focus in on clarifying, making sure that we had clear curricular pathways, helping students choose a pathway, helping students stay on that pathway, and then ensuring learning is happening with intentional outcomes. And the reason for this is because what we found is a number of students were delayed in ultimately achieving their goal, whether that be getting into a career, having a job, transferring to another institution. There were lots of units that were taken at the community college, probably lots of frustration and bouncing around without a clear plan of action to help students reach their goal. And it really was lifting up student voice and saying, hey, look, I need more support. I need more guidance. And so our academic counselors play a huge role in helping to identify pathways based on interests. You heard Sheila reference California Career Zone, ONET, some of those resources. We leverage those and build on those as well to help students decide that clear curricular pathway. We do not decide for them. What we do is talk about the offerings within our respective institutions. The students are the drivers in terms of what that pathway might look like. And hopefully we have classes, a degree or a certificate pathway, or a series of courses that will help a student really hone in on those specific interests. Equitable placement. So this is where I'm going to speak a little bit to the question that was posed in the Q&A, but I want to talk a little bit about this for those of you who maybe attended a community college, family members, or perhaps this was part of your experience with your student as well. There used to be, when you're looking at community colleges and applying, there were conversations around placement tests. You got to take a math placement test. You got to take an English placement test. This tells us where you're at and where you should be placed. And for some, that ended up being what we call our basic skills classes. Maybe people refer to it as developmental education, maybe remedial education, but they were below the college level, your English 1A as an example. And what we found is there was lots of research, lots of information and data collected by our system that was showing that the placement tests weren't really predictors of success in those subjects, and they weren't actually leading to students achieving their goals in a timely manner. So there was a massive adjustment made. Those placement tests were eliminated by legislation, and I've listed AB 705 and most recently AB 1705. And now we use multiple measures to identify essentially for assessment and placement in college level coursework. Some of that includes a look, as Sheila mentioned, a look at the transcripts, looking at the highest coursework completed in high school and the corresponding course grade. Sometimes it's self-report because depending on when the student is coming in and how far removed they are from high school and access to transcripts, we really need to pull in the perspective, and lift that perspective of the student up. And like I said, there were massive changes to developmental education, or there were changes to the placement test that ultimately led to changes in developmental education. So you will see, if you're looking at community colleges, not complete elimination across the board, but there are fewer below college level English and math courses that are available. And what happened is changes were made to curriculum with embedded support in the form of English companion classes, support classes, math companion courses, really beefed up tutoring. I'll tell you more about my department, but we have a dedicated tutor who is constantly working with, I'm surprised they're not here right now with a student, one-on-one for hours, just working through the curriculum and supporting students in their understanding based on how they learn and where they're at, so that they can be most successful in the college level course and can then advance to the next class. I'll also tell you simultaneously, my college, within my division, we still offer educational assistance classes. These classes are for students, primarily students with disabilities who are specifically looking for coursework and developing foundational skills and functional skills in math and English. And so we might be looking more around budgeting, money management, let's say in our math skills class. And for our English class, we might be talking more about effective communication, sending messages out to perhaps our instructors, or thinking about jobs. And it's heavily linked to career preparations or conversations around college success and career success. I want to, I mentioned wanting to speak to the piece around, this is standardized tests, what we had within the community college system around the math and English placement test. There was reference to changes around SAT and ACT and standardized tests. I am not an expert in this area, but I know a little bit based on working in higher education, post-secondary education. And there's a fair amount of research that has shown that the standardized tests, the traditional standardized tests that we know for college admissions, have not been indicators of success. They're not assessing critical thinking, creativity, and they also haven't been clear indicators around students that are going to complete and do well in college or in careers. And so I think there's some research out of Cornell with some professors in that area, but it's really across the board and obviously a national movement. There's also data and research that shows that those on the margins are most impacted negatively by standardized tests. And so there were really, in looking at that, they were trying to eliminate barriers to access and opportunities to college and ultimately success. And I think Vanessa and both Sheila are really speaking to it, this self-advocacy piece, the enhanced supports within college institutions have really been drivers of if students are seeking the support, accessing it, and consistent with the support, then those have been better indicators. And I don't want to speak for every single individual because it just wouldn't be the case, right? But what I can tell you is there was enough information to say what we were doing was not working, and it was blocking opportunities for students to even find a way within college systems, within community colleges and universities as well. So options. What are my options when I talk about community colleges? This is simply a pathway, images of pathways within College of Marin, but you'll see something very similar, different in design, with other community colleges. So if I were to click on auto machine technology, it's going to tell me about our machine and metals programs. It's going to tell me about our engineering programs. It's not only going to tell me about the program, but it's going to tell me the classes that I need to take, perhaps the sequence in which I want to take them, and it may even tell me some earnings potential there. Same with earth and environment, people, culture, and society. I might find anthropology, psychology, sociology in there. Maybe I'll see associate degree programs. Maybe I'll see associate degree for transfer. I'll find the classes that I need to take depending on that respective pathway and potential jobs, potential earning. Same with business and innovation. Let me go right here to, let me go back. When we're looking at wellness and public safety, I might find our administration of justice program and opportunities that exist there. So, and then STEM as well. So these are important pieces to when you're starting early, and Sheila referenced 9th grade, great opportunity to explore the college. If you're thinking about community college closest to you, what it has to offer, and meeting with someone, an academic counselor or accessibility counselor. I'll talk more about our role and talking through what that respective pathway may look like. Are there opportunities to even try it before completion of high school, whether that be a certificate of completion or a high school diploma? Support. What if I need it? I talked about mental health, academic counseling to help with pathways. You'll find colleges are providing basic needs support around food and housing, disability support programs and services, accessibility services. We have financial aid support, someone to help you walk through that application process so you can access resources, that financial resources to go to college, to afford books, and any other educational expenses tied to that. Tutoring, reading and writing support, undocumented student services, career and internship services, transfer support. You'll find that many of these services you'll find across our system. And yes, they may look a little bit different, but you'll see some consistent things. What about access supports and reasonable accommodations? There was a question around reassessment. What I'll tell you is in the community college system, we encourage any student who has an access need, whether you have documentation or you don't. You may have an IEP, awesome, 504, great. Information from a medical professional, a general practitioner, a licensed clinician. If you have it, bring it. It could certainly inform the conversation. It is not required to access our services. In many cases, we found, especially during the pandemic, students were struggling with even getting access to their education. So there were provisional accommodations put in place based on what we call an interactive process. Let's have a conversation around where you're at, what your needs are, and let's talk about the next steps. But let's not create barriers to you receiving additional support. If you tell me that, processing information in a particular way is challenging, well, then what can we talk about that might support your learning? Perhaps you have some tools, technology, resources that have proven beneficial while you're in high school. How can we leverage that and build that into your academic accommodation plan in college, which is what shifts for us. It's no longer an IEP, it becomes an AAP in community colleges. These are just examples of some of the accommodations that students may have as part of their academic accommodation plan. But it's unique, it's individualized, it's building upon supports and things that have been most helpful. It's strength-based, and if you do for some reason need reassessment, then that may be part of a conversation that we have if that's what's making sense in the conversation. Many of our colleges have learning disability specialists that are free and are available to provide some eligibility testing and assessment if that makes sense based on the interactive process. Where should I begin? Well, you should begin as early as possible. But you want to know where your local community college is. We talked about the exploration of academic programs and support services within that college. Perhaps you want to meet with an academic counselor. Know that many of us within accessibility services are also academic counselors. And so maybe your first place is meeting with the disability support professional so you can speak to both. If they don't do the academic advising piece, that's okay. They'll support you in the next step. We have a common application. We all use the same application within 116 colleges, and you just designate the specific college. Applying for financial aid and designating a school as part of the financial aid process is important. And then really thinking about that educational plan. Doesn't matter if you're going to work towards a certificate or a degree for transfer. To have a sense of the courses that you want to take within a given semester and maybe even the next is a good plan so that you have a clear understanding of your pathway and where you want to go, and know that you can always make adjustments. And then you want to register for classes, and you want to ensure that the support services are lined up before the first day of class so that you can build those relationships and know where to go when you need support. These are some of the resources that were some like Think College. I love Department of Rehabilitation. We work closely with career quizzes, and then also some resources around finding a college near you and how you can afford college, even a community college, which may be a more affordable option. Still, there may be some financial needs there. So with that, I will stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Stormy. I learned a lot from that. I didn't know the APP, another acronym for me. Just add it to the acronym list. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And now to batting cleanup. Is that what they call it? Bregan Arnett from Dominican.
Yeah, hello, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and screen share. Give me just 1 second. All right. If for some reason this is not working, let me know. Thank you so much for having me here today to speak with you guys a little bit about Dominican University of California. I'm Bregan. I am the Assistant Director of Undergraduate Admissions at DUC. I'm going to be talking today about accessibility and support services and resources for students and, of course, their families, because it's a family affair, right? We're all in this together. Just a little background about Dominican before we dive in. DUC offers more than 60 majors, minors, and concentrations. We have some graduate programs as well. We include several disciplines, including the arts, humanities, social sciences, education, business, health, natural sciences. They're all built on our core curriculum. There is really something for everybody at Dominican, which is really exciting. There is lots of financial aid support. There's lots of accommodation support. So we're going to talk about that today. Dominican is a 4-year private institution with a population of under 2,000 students. We offer small class sizes and we have really close relationships with our professors. We have a pretty tight-knit community with lots of room for personal growth, and we do offer tutoring and coaching, accommodations, and other support services. All are welcome at Dominican. We really are working hard and hopefully have proven to show that we have a very welcoming and accommodating environment for everybody. So let's dive into some of that. Our Accessibility and Disability Services Center is housed within our Student Success Center. Our ADS office provides holistic support and resources for students, faculty, staff. We use a student-centered approach. The ADS team consists of integrative coaches who work collaboratively and who are skilled practitioners in student support. They really know what they're talking about. They're really excited to work with you and to make sure that you are supported through your entire journey, your entire educational journey. The ADS team understands disabilities from a social model of disability, not a deficit model. Recognizing that the environment and attitudes can have an impact on a student's abilities, we seek to accommodate students by removing barriers into access on all areas on campus and college life, especially in the classroom. Our goal is to help students achieve their full potential and meet the highest standards of academic rigor and excellence expected of Dominican students. And of course, our Office of Disability Services helps students navigate all processes, including seeking documentation, communication with faculty and other campus partners about accommodations, the transition from high school to college, including the shift from IDEA to ADA. We're going to talk about that a little bit in a minute. So we are committed to fostering an inclusive community. We believe it's our, collective responsibility to accommodate students and create a culture of access and success for everyone. We have 5 main categories of accommodations, and they're listed here: academic, housing, emotional support animals, unique accommodation needs, and then amending accommodations. If you take out your phone and open your camera, I have a QR code in the bottom right-hand screen here. If you open your camera and go straight to that website, it'll take you right to our Accessibility and Disability Services website, where you can tap each type of those accommodations, and it will expand with what all academic, for example, what all different types of testing accommodations and things that we do on the academic side. What kind of accommodations do we do on the housing side, like single rooms for somebody who might need accessibility access as opposed to living with multiple roommates, things like that. So if you are interested in more information on what each of these entail, go ahead and scan that code. It'll take you right to our website. I'll give you one more second before I move on, just in case anyone has their phone out. It's trying to get that code there. Okay, cool. I am going to move on. I have a few things that my director of disability services wanted me and accessibility services wanted me to go over. The first one is IDEA versus ADA versus Section 405 in college. So in high school, families and teachers take a pretty active role in their student success. In college, however, students must learn how to self-identify and self-advocate while also working directly with professional staff and faculty for access and success. At Dominican, our ADS team is made up of integrative coaches who can support students throughout that entire accommodation process. They're there for you. They'll know you by name. You'll know them by name. You'll be able, to build that relationship. And that's really what we're looking for. So we heard a lot about 2-year colleges already, right? So I want to talk about 4-year schools versus 2-year support. At our university, everybody on the ADS team is an integrative coach and has extensive training. You have the option to stick with your same coach the entire time you're at Dominican if you really want to build that relationship, or potentially work with more than one coach if that's something you want to do. Coaching is an essential part of the college student experience, and it's not, it's not counseling. Let me back up to my note here. It's not counseling. This is a student-directed goal setting with a supportive professional with whom the student will build a strong working relationship. Each student at Dominican is able to work with one or more integrative coaches, kind of like I mentioned. Many other schools may offer this as well. So it's important to know how committed a university or a college is to coaching support, as there's pretty wide evidence to suggest that support networks for students, especially students with disabilities, first generation students, low income students, that support is directly connected with their success at the university. And that's what we want. We want to make sure that all of our students are succeeding and have all the access that they need. Another struggle that can be really real is fitting in socially at a residential university. Colleges that are residential in nature it can be a struggle to fit in socially for everybody. The residential college experience is such a powerful opportunity for students to learn and grow, and learn about themselves, learn about others. And we understand it can be a challenge to make connections or to feel understood and balance a rigorous academic load with socializing. Peer mentoring support, which Dominican offers to all first-year students, is a robust disability service office, which is so much more than just an ADA compliance office, are 2 ways that we help students feel connected into a community and try to give that support. Our students are not required to live on campus. So if you are wanting to live on campus, you are wanting to have that experience, we welcome it. If you feel more comfortable not doing so, we welcome that as well. There's really no wrong answer. But if you are somebody who struggles to fit in socially sometimes, I certainly do sometimes, we have, support for that, which is super important. And then our ADS staff has a background in executive functioning, which is super important. Colleges like Dominican have an opportunity to support the whole integrated student. And this includes executive functioning, planning, time management, organization, and regulation. Students can talk with disability staff, services, counselors, and other professional staff on campus to learn about how students are supported to grow in all ways of adulting, if you will. Dominican, for example, offers 4 courses that are part of the integrative coaching curriculum. These courses include navigating college, career jumpstart, peer mentoring, and adulting. These will help students learn how to be their own definition of success and grow based on their own personal goals. On top of that, Dominicans focus on the community, engagement, and service learning are important ways to practice being successful in the world. A lot of really great resources here. I just want to also mention that Dominican is committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is something that we're very passionate about on our campus. We believe that diversity strengthens us and strengthens our communities, not only on campus, but in every aspect of our lives. At Dominican, we're committed to building a diverse and equitable and inclusive community and a culture that is welcoming and supportive of all. And disability is diversity. All learners deserve to feel included, respected, supported while they're at school with us. If you have additional information, I have my contact information here. I'm the assistant director of admissions. So if you have any of those specific questions about applying to college, what those scholarships might look like, I'm your girl. If you have very specific questions about accessibility on campus, or maybe connecting with a coach, Matthew Mueller is our director of accessibility and disability on campus. I have both of our contact information here. You are welcome to take out your phone and take a picture of this screen, or take a screenshot, whatever works best for you, because we are here to support you and help you however that may be on your academic journey. So thank you so much for having me.